Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And so now that it seems almost certain that Biden will be inaugurated as president next January, over 10 weeks from now, it's time to turn our attention to the damage that Trump may still intend to cause in that ridiculously long period of time that he will still be president. A deranged president, no boundaries, no concept of consequences, with a shaky grasp on reality at best, tens of millions of supporters, like hardcore supporters, many of whom are armed to the teeth, and all the executive powers of the president of the most powerful country on earth. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, the news that Trump's time in office is now severely limited is extremely welcome. A more emphatic win, however, would have been much more welcome. The problem now is that Trump is continuing to divide America in a very dangerous way, purely to prevent his own ego being pricked. He can't accept defeat. His niece was being interviewed, explaining that he is incapable of admitting defeat. So he wasn't defeated. He's not being defeated. He's having something unfairly taken from him. Trump and much of his team have been pushing the notion that there is widespread electoral fraud, robbing the orange one of the presidency. Actually, no, not robbing Trump, but robbing the American people. He laid the groundwork a long time ago before the election. There's nothing surprising about his behaviour now. He told us exactly what he was going to do. He argued that mail-in ballots would be riddled with fraud, with absolutely no grounds whatsoever for saying so. Judges have been throwing cases out left, right and centre and will continue to do so. But Trump is not trying to convince educated judges who are listening to the facts and have an understanding of both the law and the Constitution. He's trying to fool ordinary Americans that supported him, that when it comes down to it, don't really understand the nitty-gritty of the electoral process any better than any citizens of any other country. All most people in any democracy know is that you turn up to cast your vote and your smartphone tells you who won. If you keep an eye on it, that is. The problem this time is that your smartphone is sometimes telling you that Trump won and sometimes telling you that Biden won. He's sowing doubt in the minds of his supporters. Doubts that are a lot easier to plant due to the tight margins in the contest. And don't quote me the popular vote results. Trump lost that in 2016 as well. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's meaningless in a first-past-the-post, winner-takes-all style of democracy. Very few votes actually count in America, just like in the UK. But if we're going to say anything about the popular vote, it should be this. With the exception of Joe Biden, Donald Trump in 2020 has won more votes than any other presidential candidate in history. Over 70 million people have voted for Trump. Now, I grant you, many of these Americans will accept the result. For whatever reason, and there will be many, they just wanted Trump over Biden. They were not necessarily going to be the sorts to go along with his delusions. They may not even have liked him as president. They just thought that either they or America profits more from Trump than from Biden. And certainly Jo Jorgensen. Or maybe they did prefer her, but wanted to use their vote on a realistic prospect for the president. Many will just be dyed-in-the-wool Republicans. Thankfully, many Republicans have distanced themselves from Trump's attempted subversion of the electoral process. Not all, you could even argue not enough, but a good number, which will inevitably help. However, a significant number amongst this 70 million are exactly the sort of people to believe that the authorities are somehow stealing the election. After all, Trump was the anti-establishment candidate in 2016. He billed himself as the anti-establishment president. Of course, the establishment would stop at nothing to unseat such a great champion against their interests. Apparently, even in Georgia, somehow, despite it having a Republican Secretary of State and governor, by focusing his supporters' attention on mail-in votes and by getting them to vote in person, he helped the election's doubts bloom. Because in the vast majority of Trump supporters, they vote on the day in person. So the verification takes place there. Those are counted fairly rapidly. And a large proportion of Biden supporters voted safely in advance by mail. Now, in a close contest, Trump created chances for his personality cult to emerge from this. Because first of all, he tried to disenfranchise mail-in voters. So the US Postal Service still has questions to answer about their part in this. Texas, for example, also made it a lot more difficult for Biden supporters because they issued one mail-in collection point per county. So small rural counties more likely to vote for Trump. You know, that's fine for the relatively small number of people who live there. Very popular cities, one for the whole city where millions live, that's not so fine. You know, you've got Florida, the likely demographic of Democrat-leaning citizens in Florida that were denied a vote completely because they once went to jail or something. In addition, the main delay caused by mail-in votes is not the time it takes to receive them. Most are received nice and early. It's that many states are not permitted to verify them until it's time to start counting. Of course, we understand they shouldn't count them early. But if they've got the verification, that's what holds it up, the verification process. There's another thing holding it up I'll get to in a minute as well. The verification process to make sure it's valid and that someone hasn't voted twice, for example, that causes the delay. If that had been completed in advance, then all the results could have been processed quickly. There'd have been no reason for mail-in ballots to be processed after, you know, the ones on the day. There is another reason why it looks like it's ground to a halt now. So I gather from observers in the process that Trump's observers, the Republican observers, were initially trying to get ballots thrown out for all sorts of stupid reasons. Now the message has been given, just challenge all the ballots. So you go, I think this ballot should be thrown out. On what basis? It doesn't seem to have 90-degree corners exactly. I'm not entirely sure. I don't have my set square with me, but it looks a bit odd. And then someone will just tell them, don't be stupid, it's going through. That's fine. Then they go and find another ballot and challenge that, slowing the whole process down. For what reason, I don't know. Presumably closer American observers will know, but maybe just out of spite. But that is why at the moment it just looks like it's ground to a halt. But as it is, the result of all these policies would be that Trump would initially appear to be winning a significant number of states the day after the election that he would ultimately lose. So people get it into their heads that Trump is winning in those states. After all, they're used to within a day or two knowing the results. This is strange this year. And so they look at the situation at the time when they expect to know who's won. They see states heavily in favour of Trump. He's winning by a few 100,000 maybe. And then he's suddenly losing. He tells them that this only started happening after the observers left. We had our observers and it was all going fine. I was winning. Then the observers left. But again, of course, this is untrue. I think CNN did it best because they were playing the claims about observers not being present at the same time as showing a live feed to account where observers were present, just to hammer the falsehood home. But a population fed a steady diet of conspiracy theories, especially over social media, and told that actual conspiracy theories are fake news, are ready to believe almost anything. You know, in any country this is dangerous. I worry about where the UK is headed, for example. But America is different because they have this unhealthy fascination with guns. I'm told they believe that their constitutional rights to own a military-grade arsenal is vital should they ever need to take down an oppressive state machine that goes rogue. Because I was always really confused. Like, if you're talking about, because you have this hunting culture, okay, a hunting rifle, and you have this self-defense culture, okay, a pistol. I don't get the automatic weapons. It's because it's in case the government ever tried to suppress the people. We don't stand for any of that nonsense in America, so the people can rise up against an oppressive state machine. Isn't that what Trump is trying to persuade millions of them that the Biden administration will be? Because there's the comical and the worrying side to Trump's delusions from now on. Safe in the knowledge that Biden will now become president, we can relax a little, particularly if we're displaced by several thousand miles. We can read reports about how those close to Trump are trying to work out who's going to tell him. Who's going to say, look, Donny, you're not going to be president in a few months' time. You need to come to grips with the fact that, you know, Joe Biden's going to become president. How do you feel about that? If he barricades himself in the Oval Office, we can look forward to the authorities physically ejecting him from the building. I'd very much like to see that. I'm not sure I can see it happening as I would imagine it. I can believe he will refuse to go. I do believe in the super gluing himself to the chair in the Oval Office. I'm not moving. I'm staying here, son. And I can believe in some forceful intervention to get him out being required. But I would imagine by the time he's got to the front door in full view of the cameras, because the cameras won't be inside, I reckon he'll be under his own steam. He'll be walking himself, sadly not being dragged out by his ankles. But amongst the levity of these images, there is also the thought that his supporters have guns. And they believe, some of them believe, genuinely believe, that the election is being stolen. It's not just that, like with some of them, it's a good lie. Some of them, for the lie to work, some have to genuinely believe it. They have already attempted to use their guns to intimidate voters. So convinced are they that it's important to the soul of America that Trump is president. Apparently, 17 million guns were bought in the US this year. This is reportedly the most in US history. Now, why would that be? There are people who have engaged in aggressive civic action over the last few years, and we know what's happened. Peaceful protests getting the full pepper spray treatment from the police, violent protesters, if they're Trump supporters, even if they wish to storm a government building and kidnap a governor, being excused by Trump, even encouraged by the president. Positive reinforcement of this sort of behaviour and 17 million guns. Actually, no, 17 million extra guns than they already had. They already had quite a hefty number as far as I could tell. So although the writing may be on the wall for Trump, which maybe, thinking about it, someone should write it in a Sharpie so we can read it, the impact of his rhetoric, of course, is going to take rather longer to deal with and may yet cause serious harm still to come. And then imagine what could happen if Trump were to be arrested and prosecuted for crimes that he was apparently immune to as president. What are those supporters going to think to that? Political witch hunt. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.